You weren't supposed to see it. It was a spreadsheet, left open on a shared screen just for a second, and then it was burned into your head for a week. His name, his number, and a figure that was almost exactly double yours. Your first thought was that it had to be a mistake, because you are the one who trained this guy. You answer his questions. You quietly fix the things he breaks on a Wednesday before they can explode on a Friday. So the number made no sense, but it wasn't a mistake. It was honestly the most honest thing your company had ever told you. You just didn't speak the language yet. So you decided to learn it. Here is what you knew for sure. You worked harder than him, and it was not close. You were the first one online and the last one to really log off. And somewhere in the middle, you carried the kind of work that doesn't have a name, the quiet saves, the small disasters nobody ever found out about because you caught them in time, the questions the whole team kept bringing to your desk because you, reliably, always had the answer. You were the reliable one, and you were proud of that. Your whole life, that had been the deal. Work hard, keep your head down, stay loyal, and it all works out in the end. Someone notices and someone takes care of you. It was less a rule you had read somewhere, and more a feeling you had never once thought to question. So if pay followed effort, even a little, that number on the screen should have been yours. It wasn't, which meant pay was quietly following something else, something you couldn't see, and you decided you were going to find out exactly what. So you started watching him. Not in a strange way, just paying attention the way you somehow never had before. And at first, honestly, it was almost funny, because the man did not appear to work. He arrived around 9:40 with a coffee, always with a coffee. He would drift past your desk, say something warm and vague like, "Let me loop in leadership on that," and then float off into a meeting you were never invited to. He had a gift, you started to realize, for being seen. When a project went well, he was somehow standing right next to it in the photo. When a project went badly, he had, somehow, raised his concerns early. He spoke in those round, confident, leadership-shaped sentences, the ones that don't actually say anything but still manage to sound expensive. And he never seemed to actually finish anything, but he was forever just about to. There was always a deck on the way, a sink he wanted to set up, a thread he was hoping to get the right eyes on. His work lived comfortably in the future where, conveniently, nobody could ever quite check it. And the coffee. He was always just grabbing a coffee. You used to think that was proof he was lazy. But the coffee machine, you slowly noticed, was also exactly where your boss liked to stand. By the end of that week, you were sure you had cracked it. He wasn't smarter than you, and he definitely wasn't working harder than you. He was just better at being seen. And being seen, clearly, was the entire game. So you tried it, and this is the part that is a little bit embarrassing. You started speaking up in meetings even when you had nothing new to add. You sent the update email to a slightly bigger group than you strictly needed to. You said the words "circle back" out loud on purpose, and a small piece of you died as it happened. You even started carrying a notebook into meetings you didn't need to be in, just so you would look like a man with important things to track. And here is the thing, it kind of worked. People started saying your name in rooms you weren't even in. Your manager mentioned in passing that it was great to see you being so proactive lately. You got a little hit of it, that warm little buzz of being noticed, and you thought, this is it, I found the lever, I just had to pull it. For about 2 weeks, you genuinely felt like you were winning. You were sure that the next number, whenever it came, was finally going to be yours. You were wrong. You hadn't found the lever at all. You had found a decoy, and you were about to learn the difference in the worst possible way. Then somebody quit. Not him. Somebody else, a quiet, capable person, a lot like you, who walked into a one-on-one on a normal Tuesday and calmly explained that they had another offer. And the company, the same company that had handed you a polite 3% and a thank you, suddenly discovered a great deal of money overnight to make this person stay. And you sat with that for a long moment, and you finally saw the whole thing. It was never about being seen. Being seen was just the decoy. The thing the company actually pays for, the only thing it really pays for, is the fear of losing you. That is it. That is the entire language. A raise is never really a reward for the work you already did. It is a bribe, paid right now, to stop a loss they are suddenly scared of. And suddenly, he made perfect sense. It wasn't only that he was visible, it was that everyone all the time quietly assumed he could walk out the door tomorrow. He always had a coffee, and he always, somehow, had options. They paid him double, not because he gave more, but because they genuinely believed he might leave. Nobody ever had to say it out loud. The possibility just sat there, quietly, in every room, doing all the negotiating for him. And you had spent years turning yourself into the safest bet in the entire building. And that is the moment it really landed, the part that actually hurt. The one thing you were most proud of was the exact thing keeping you poor. You were reliable. You were loyal. You never threatened to leave. You never went looking. You never once made anyone nervous. And in the language your company actually speaks, none of that said valuable. It said safe. It said, this one is not going anywhere, so this one can wait. You were not underpaid by accident. You were priced correctly, almost perfectly, as the person who would never leave. Every quiet year you stayed and asked for nothing, you were politely telling them that your price was zero. And every year, they believed you because you kept proving it. You had handed them years of quiet proof that you would stay no matter what. And proof, it turns out, is the single most expensive gift you can ever give the person who decides your salary. That promise you grew up with, work hard, stay loyal, and it will all work out, it was not exactly a lie. It just wasn't the deal you thought you were signing. You were the reliable one. And that, it turns out, was exactly what they were counting on. So now you know the number, and you finally understand it completely. He was not paid more for doing less. You were not paid less for doing more. You were both paid exactly what the company was afraid to lose. He just made very sure that they were afraid. And here's the uncomfortable part, the part nobody really warns you about. Knowing this does not set you free, because the only way to change your number is to become a little bit, the very thing you used to quietly roll your eyes at, a little less reliable, a little more willing to walk, a little more like a man who is always, somehow, just grabbing a coffee. The coffee, it turns out, was never really about the coffee. You did everything right. You were steady, you were loyal, you were the one they could always count on. And that is precisely exactly why the number was never going to be yours. Not because you gave too little, but because you made it far, far too clear that you were always going to stay.